Hello and welcome to Global News Today, bringing you in-depth discussion with leading experts every weekday here on Arabiya English. I'm Tom Burges Watson. Coming up today, as world leaders show mixed reactions to Saturday's US operation in Venezuela, we find out how these events have gone down in the United States itself. Plus, as Saudi Arabia steps up humanitarian aid to Gaza, we get the latest on the situation there across the Palestinian territories. And we'll also have the latest on developments in war-torn Yemen. Hello and welcome to the program. Now it is all eyes on Venezuela. This as President Nicolás Maduro is due in a New York court today, with many speculating over whether his arrest is about alleged drug smuggling, regime change, or other strategic interests, including access to the country's natural resources. So what next for Venezuela? And what does this crisis mean for US involvement in the region? Well, as some Maduro supporters take to the streets, President Trump says that the US will run Venezuela and rebuild its oil infrastructure.
We're going to run it, fix it. We'll have elections at the right time. But the main thing you have to fix, it's a broken country. There's no money. There's inflation. Like we would have had, if I didn't win this election, we would have been Venezuela on steroids.
Well, speaking to Face the Nation, the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio described how President Maduro's arrest unfolded, calling it one of the most daring operations ever carried out by the United States.
We got the top priority. The number one person on the list was the guy who claimed to be the president of the country that he was not, and he was arrested along with his wife, who was also indicted. And that was a pretty sophisticated and frankly complicated operation.
It was.
It is not easy to land helicopters in the middle of the largest military base in the country. The guy lived on a military base. Land within 3 minutes, kick down his door, grab him, put him in handcuffs, read him his rights, put him in a helicopter, and leave the country without losing any American or any American assets. I do think this is one of the most, daring, complicated, sophisticated missions this country has carried out in a very long time. Tremendous credit to the U.S. military personnel who did it. It was unbelievable.
Well, let's get more now. We can speak to Greg Swenson, who is the chair of Republicans Overseas. He joins us now from Naples, Florida. Greg, Happy New Year to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. First up, pretty obvious sort of a question. When you saw these events unfolding on Saturday in the early hours of the morning, did you say to yourself, I saw this coming?
Yeah, I can't say that I saw the scale of the invasion coming, but everything was pretty well telegraphed. The buildup of the naval assets off the coast of Venezuela, we hadn't seen that ever actually, and then of course all the conversation about what Maduro would do and the options that he had, and so I think that the president, similar to the situation with Iran, where he gave the mullahs as well as he gave Maduro every chance to exit or to manage the process peacefully or diplomatically. And because they refused, he used the military option. So yeah, I don't think it was a total shock, but it was a surprise to see the scale and the precision of the mission. That was really fascinating to watch and made us really proud to be Americans.
I want to ask you about how this has gone down in America, because according to opinion polls, public opinion looks pretty split, largely along party lines, but not entirely. Yeah. How is this going down in America?
Well, I think like with most things that the president does, it will be viewed on very partisan lines, right? The Democrats will criticize, President Trump no matter what he does. Contrary to, for example, when Barack Obama signed off on, or President Obama signed off on the termination of Osama bin Laden, that drew great support from the Republicans and Americans in general. This president's different in the sense that, the Trump derangement syndrome is real and it exists. So even Chuck Schumer, who was very much a hawk on Venezuela back in Trump's first term, has flipped around and has said that, this is outrageous. So, that's typical and to be expected from the Democrats. Many of whom always embrace these 80-20 issues, not that this is 80-20, but they always seem to side with the criminals in many of these cases, especially the Venezuelan criminals, like in the Lake and Riley case last year. And so I think you have a situation where it will fall along partisan lines, with the exception, as you pointed out, Tom, there is criticism from within the Republican Party. You have Thomas Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene, that are very averse to any foreign interventions. And that's a conversation that's probably healthy to have. And I do think, there will be some pushback from the true isolationist right. But I think that's healthy, and that's a good conversation to have.
Right, but they've got a point, haven't they? Because, I mean, in a sense, President Trump, he campaigned on this ticket of America first. He's the president of peace, not the president who's going to get America involved in another overseas situation. And that's what's happened. So, I mean, there must be people in the GOP who are thinking, why are we entering this, latest overseas conflict, potentially? And why wasn't this run by Congress? I mean, how's that being answered?
Yeah, there's a couple of points there, and both good ones. Look, there's precedent here. First of all, in terms of not going to Congress, there had to be absolute secrecy on this mission to maintain that advantage, that tactical advantage of surprise. So there's precedent there. I mean, George H.W. Bush did the same thing when he ousted Manuel Noriega from Panama, similar to what Reagan did in Grenada. And so there's, to the first point, there's just a lot of differences between this situation and the quagmires that we had in obviously in Afghanistan and Iraq, as well as even Libya and Syria. So, these are places that are a far distance from America. Remember, Venezuela is a very close neighbor. By air and sea, it's only a few hundred miles from the Florida coast, from the southeastern U.S. And so it is a neighbor. And so with America first, it's important that it's not America alone, first of all. And secondly, you really need peace and security in the region, and we were not getting that in Venezuela. So it's really different. There's a much greater risk than to America having Venezuela being already invaded by Russia, by China, by Hamas, by Hezbollah. There was a lot of bad actors operating there. You had the massive flow of Venezuelan criminals into the U.S. that were released from jails by Maduro. You had the drug trade. So, I mentioned the Lake and Riley case. That's something that, put Americans at risk when Venezuela was sending, their lowest their lowest and their least desirable citizens to America, and with great cooperation by President Biden, of course. But that's all changed. But I do think, I'd have to just remind the viewers that, that there were great and significant risks to America by having a Venezuela that was essentially occupied by our adversaries.
Sure, and I think some of President Trump's critics would agree with that. But at the same time, going back to Marjorie Taylor Greene, I mean, she's pointed out a few double standards here, and I'm assuming she's become a bit of a thorn in the side of the president. She said most of the drugs-related deaths in the United States are actually the fault of Mexican drug cartels, not Venezuelan ones. So why not go after them, she says. And she also says, why pardon the former president of Honduras, Juan Orlando Hernandez, who was convicted of smuggling massive quantities of cocaine into the United States? I mean, she makes some pretty reasonable points here. Yeah. Does President Trump need to listen to her, or can he just disregard her?
Yeah, I think he can do the latter. I don't think he'll pay too much attention to that. I think, maybe Thomas Massey, who has always or often been a critic of the president, might have some more, more attention paid to him because, of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene is leaving Congress if she hasn't left already. So I do think that he does have to listen to the critics on the MAGA right, and that's okay. It's good to have these discussions. I think this is, again, it's different than past military invasions. The Iran execution last year was, sort of a tactical military strike. It didn't have anything to do with regime change or any sort of long-term strategy. It was just to eliminate the nuclear arms risk that was posed. This is different on a few different levels. But I do think that the president, used diplomatic options first. But there were too many risks, and to Marjorie Taylor Greene on the drug trade, there is a point there that Mexico is a much greater threat, and we are addressing that. And there, I will expect, if the president of Mexico doesn't take action, I would expect some military strikes on the cartels, and we've seen them already. So I know there's much more of a flow, but that's driven by Venezuela. The Venezuelan drug cartel, the Maduro cartel, has really controlled many of the Mexican cartels. So there's a lot of connection there. There's a lot of connectivity. So I don't think that we could that simple statement has a ton of merit, when even if it was just a fraction of what we're seeing from Mexico, that fraction is American lives. And the same argument could be made about Canada. A lot of Trump's critics were saying that, well, only 1% or 0.5% of the fentanyl was coming through the Canadian border. Well, that's 10,000 lives, right? So, that's not something that we can ignore when fentanyl and other drugs are killing more Americans than we've ever lost it in a war.
Okay, and I mean, just in terms of what the White House and the Trump administration's desired outcome is here, I mean, again, help us clarify here, because I'm getting a couple of mixed messages. On the one hand, President Trump said on Saturday, he said, we are going to run Venezuela until a transition takes place. But he says also, well, the White House says they don't want a regime change. And it looks like President Maduro's number two, Delcy Rodriguez, is cooperating with Washington and is filling the shoes of the head of state. So where are we heading here? I mean, what do you think America wants to achieve in terms of how Venezuela is run?
Well, I think ultimately it will be a peaceful and democratically run Venezuela and a return to economic prosperity. That's what's going on the people of Venezuela. So that's the long run. The short run is really up to them in many ways. And I think, the great risk would be having a Maduro 2.0. So if the vice president now, sitting president, it turns into Maduro 2.0. We've heard some pushback from the senior people in Venezuela, a little bit of defiance against the U.S. That's not a game I would suggest playing. I think the president will give them a chance, but if they don't do it the way the president and the way America wants it, then there will be more military action. And the president mentioned that on Saturday. So, I think he would like a quick and peaceful transition with the existing government, followed by free and fair elections. And I think Venezuela is very ripe for democracy. And that's another difference between this and other foreign adventures that we've made over the last 2 decades. This is a country that had a robust democracy, a country with a robust economy. They were the richest country in South America before the Chavistas took over. And so I think in many respects, this is a return to prosperity, but it's really up to them whether they do it, peacefully and quickly. If they don't, and they return or try to make it Maduro 2.0 or Hugo Chavez 2.0, 3.0, you'll see a return from the U.S. military. And the president would rather not do that, but he will if it's necessary.
Okay, I mean, one of the other concerns that's being raised, not just in America, but internationally as well, is this issue of precedent. So it's okay for America to do this in Venezuela, but supposing Russia did something similar in Ukraine, or China did something similar in Taiwan, how would America then have a leg to stand on in calling out those two countries for doing something quite similar?
Yeah, I think you have to look at the underlying reasons and why they're doing it. Now with China and Russia, they are very much the aggressors, and they would look at their so-called enemies as part of their country, or that they deserve to own that. The U.S. is not colonizing Venezuela, and there was great risks to the United States from what was going on in Venezuela, from the Maduro regime, again, with the drug trafficking, with the absolute wreckage of the economy, and that caused the outflow, the mass migration of Venezuelans out of the country. And so, and many of them ended up in the United States. Again, that's probably not as big a risk now because the border has been closed, but still the damage that was done from Venezuela and very purposely done by the Maduro regime, that's something that can't be ignored. So I think it's apples and oranges to compare this to potential aggression from China and Russia. This is, and by the way, this is in our neighborhood. Now, granted, you could make that argument about Taiwan, and Ukraine. But this is part of the return to the Monroe Doctrine. We saw this with Teddy Roosevelt 100 years ago or 120 years ago, and we're seeing it again now with President Trump. This is our hemisphere, and we want our neighbors to be peaceful and preferably democratically elected.
Okay, one of the things that was striking from what Secretary of State Marco Rubio said on Saturday in the press conference about those developments on that day was that what this shows is that President Trump is a president who does what he says he's going to do. And some of the things he says he might do or has threatened to do include seizing Greenland, possibly making Canada another state of the United States of America. I mean, we laugh, but I mean, one doesn't know. I mean, do you think those countries, and perhaps Iran and Cuba too, need to be perhaps on notice?
Well, definitely Cuba. There's no doubt about that. Canada was just trolling. That was, and I think in retrospect that was a mistake because it really helped with the election of the liberal candidate in that election. The conservatives were up 20 points before that whole situation got heated, and that started, again, just trolling. I think the president there's no intention of making Canada the 51st state. That would just be 2 more Democrat senators in the Senate. So we surely don't want that. But I think that was just sort of, in some ways, President Trump just kind of, again, trolling or toying with the Canadians. But Greenland is an important asset to think about. It doesn't necessarily mean taking it over. It just means that Greenland has great incentive to be in a partnership with the U.S. And of course, the U.S. and NATO have great incentive for U.S. power to be demonstrated in Greenland. We already have a base there. We probably should have a few more, but there's critical minerals underground. There's a lot of energy, oil and gas assets in Greenland. But it's really important to keep that away from the sphere of influence of Russia and China, given where it's located. So I think that, controlling and protecting the Arctic, that's of great interest to the Europeans as well.
Okay, I mean, some are saying we're looking at the beginnings of a new chapter in the global world order. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. I think this president is an agent of change. He's done things that no one expected to see in our lifetimes, and all for the force of good. I mean, he uses the military strength selectively, but it's always a force for good. And I think we're seeing that. We're liberating Venezuela. The Venezuelans are cheering. I mean, it's only the Democrats and a select group of Republicans that are critical of this. I mean, the Venezuelan people are thrilled. You saw the cheering in the streets in Miami. I think Cuba should be really thinking about it. It's a good point you made, Tom, that Cuba should be looking over their shoulder here. And the people of Cuba were kind of saddened that they're hoping that they were cheering about the overthrow of Maduro, but on the other hand, they're kind of waving their hands and saying, don't forget about us. We've got 11 million people that are prisoners on their own island. And so I think there's a big Cuban and Venezuelan influence, especially in the Southeast. I'm here in Florida where there's a significant population of people that fled these communist Marxist countries and really don't want to envision another generation, of kind of missed opportunity in Cuba. So I think Cuba might be next. I think if they do it, if they're smart, they won't make the mistake that Maduro did and ignore the president's arguments, rather than being invaded or being put in jail. So I think you'll see a lot more come out in the next few weeks. I think if Venezuela cooperates, this could end up being like a really positive force for good in the region, especially, but even in the world.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed for that. Greg Swenson, Chair of Republicans Overseas.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks for your time today.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
In other news, Saudi Arabia's Defense Minister, Prince Khalid bin Salman, has met with the Vice President of Yemen's Southern Transitional Council to discuss the latest developments there. Well, the meeting was said to be marked by the spirit of brotherhood and understanding. All this comes as Yemen's government has announced that it's regained control of the region of Hadramaut. Well, we're joined now by Dr. Saad al-Din bin Taleb, who is Yemen's former Minister of Industry and Trade and a member of the Presidium of the Hadramaut National Council. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Dr. bin Taleb. It's been reported that the government has regained control of the governorate of Hadramaut, which, for the benefit of our viewers, is Yemen's largest province. It's a central eastern region on the Gulf of Aden. It's got huge historical and cultural significance and borders Saudi Arabia. I just want to start by asking you, what do we read into this development? How important is it?
Thank you. Thank you, Tom, for having me. Let me just start by saying, as you put it, the importance of Hadramaut and that it was part of the south of Yemen previously. But as you properly mentioned, that Hadramaut has significant history and significant identity, and of course, a huge diaspora across the world, numbering about 20 million. So it has its own cultural significance. Now, as we know, there has been a conflict, and particularly in the south. Of course, the north is taken by the Houthis, but the south, in Aden, the control is under the Southern Transitional Council. And the Southern Transitional Council had wanted to be the representative of all the south for a long time, and it's calling for that, and it's refusing or trying to sideline all other political organizations that are representative in the south. Now, the thing is, this Hadramaut has very close relationship with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, historically, socially, economically, and also a very long border, which makes it a significant security asset or security extension for Saudi Arabia. Now, for some time, Hadramaut has been calling for its own political identity. In other words, Hadramis, they want to draw their political future by themselves. And of course, there are several organizations that have already been formed. One of them, or more or less an umbrella organization, is the one I am with, which is the Hadramaut National Council, which was inaugurated in Riyadh about 3 years ago. Now, recently, quite unprovoked, suddenly the STC, which is supported with huge with a huge military force, has decided that it wanted to use force to bring its political agenda to Hadramaut by force. So they sent this huge military force to invade, basically, to invade Hadramaut and subdue its people to their political agenda. Now, the problem that the Hadramis have with this SDC is that it reminds them, or it is an extension of the old socialist agenda that was in the south of Yemen under the Socialist Party, of course, Yemen Socialist Party, which is important, and also the character or the behavior of the STC, which is the Southern Transitional Council. So the STC behavior in its basically its misbehavior, basically in its dictatorship, in its and it's very, very, very localized leadership in a certain area, which is regionalism, and also a huge amount of corruption that was practiced in Aden over the number of years that they have controlled Aden. So the example that the STC has provided is not really convincing for the Hadramis, but the Hadramis, okay, because they are the largest constituent of the South and the largest constituent of Yemen in terms of area, in terms of depth in culture and economy, they want their own path.
All right. So let me stop you there, because I think it is a complicated conflict for people to understand internationally, because there are all these different factions. But let me ask you a really simple question. Given what you've just told us about what's been happening in Hadramaut and that the government is now back in control of the governorate, what does that tell us about where we are in this 12-year-long conflict?
Okay, that's the most difficult question. It's not a simple question. That is the most difficult question because this has been the path that the legitimate government has been trying to walk over the last few years and basically regain control of all of Yemen, particularly Sana'a from the Houthis. And after that, of course, if you know, there was a national conference that was instituted just after the revolution of 2011, in 2012 and 2013. And this national conference has come up with a decentralized Yemen. Basically, Yemen is to be divided into 6 regions, and each region to have a great deal of independence or a great deal of autonomy. Now, that has not been completed because of the takeover by the Houthis. Since then, the major problem has been the regain of the total land of Yemen, and then to go into this, as was already approved by the United Nations as one of the references, is to have a decentralized Yemen, which many factions who are, if you like, who are like their DNA is to rule and not let others rule their own regions. They want to impose this political, like the Houthis, like the SDC. So generally, what is coming now, hopefully, is since the SDC now is in great problem of trying to reconstitute itself if it can, and they have to do a lot of deep thinking about how to go on in the future. Now, what your question, if I understand it correctly, is what is next? What is next now? Riyadh has called first for the southern factions to come to Riyadh and have a conference on what kind of a South. There is something under a title of Southern Issue. So Riyadh is now calling, or not Riyadh, actually by the president, and the president has asked the Saudis to host this conference, and this conference we are waiting for it to happen in Riyadh sometime soon, and then it will come out with some sort of a roadmap of how to come out of not only the problems in the south, but also the problems for Yemen and how to deal with the Houthi issue. So this is what we propose, what we think will happen.
Okay.
And it depends. Of course, it needs a lot of leadership. It needs a lot of planning. It needs a lot of visions. And Hadramaut actually is quite ready with his vision. Hadramaut has been ready for a number of years with different visions that has it proposed that does not impose on any other region. And it says, this is what we want for Hadramaut. And the simple word for it, just to be concise about it, is for self-rule in Hadramaut, and whoever wants to be partners with Hadramaut. For instance, like Shabwa, Al-Mahra, who are the neighbors of Hadramaut. Of course, we depend a lot on the guidance and also on the support of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And of course, the leadership of Saudi Arabia.
Okay, Dr. bin Taleb, let me ask you a bit more about this dialogue, this forum to resolve the quote-unquote southern issue there in Yemen. And Saudi Arabia has been asked to sponsor this dialogue. And I just want to ask you how optimistic you are that that dialogue is going to deliver results. Okay,
now optimism is a rare element these days, especially in the context of Yemen. But let me be, any step forward is optimistic. What happened to Hadramaut in the last month is a huge step backward, which means that the louder voice is the voice of the guns. And this idea must be broken. And what should take its place is the idea of dialogue, an idea of how do I make everyone happy? Basically, that the people accept the system, the political system that is supposed to be imposed on them. So that is exactly the issue that should be in the forefront. This needs, of course, a lot of leadership, which again, one of the maybe weaker points, and of course, visions. Now, in terms of visions, I can guarantee you that Hadramaut has been the foremost region that has proposed visions, not only for Hadramaut, but also for all of Yemen, and how to go forward in rebuilding a nation that has broken. So rebuilding failed nations is not an easy matter. I understand that completely. And we've already have almost 15 years now of conflict and, of course, of destruction and economic poverty, economic failure, and services and all that. That we know. And this has huge impact on the people. And the people have very little now to have very little tolerance now. So that's another issue. How much will the people tolerate instead of more blow-ups that happen here and there? It's a simple matter as far as we are concerned, that the rights of every people, Hadramis, Mahra, Shabwa, Aidid, Abyan, all of that should be respected, including also the needs of Tihama, the needs of Ta'iz, the needs of Marib. All of them should be respected. Is there a common ground? Absolutely. There is common ground, except that we have to get out of dictatorship. And also dictatorship that carries with it, historically, dictatorship that carries with it a huge amount of corruption, which has led us to all this mess. So without treating or dealing with these issues, then we see that this conflict will proceed for another number of years, and we don't know what the outcome will be, as we have seen in many countries when the conflict just simply becomes extended into a number of decades instead of a number of years. So now what we want is to Hadramaut can present its case. And the case that Hadramaut presents is not only for itself, but also for all of Yemen to take as an example.
Okay, Dr. bin Taleb, one final question I wanted to ask you before we wrap up. I mean, the Houthis, as everyone knows, are backed by Iran. And when we look at what's been happening in Iran, and indeed Venezuela, I mean, it does make Iran look increasingly vulnerable as a country. And I'm wondering what impact that vulnerability is having on the conflict in Yemen.
Okay, now, one character that has been shared by these militarized groups, including the Houthis, including the STC, is arrogance. And the arrogance comes from somewhere. One is the huge amounts of support that they get from somewhere else, basically the military and the financial support. And so this arrogance we expect now to be broken. And once this arrogance is broken, and this allows it to be more accepting to a more shared and a more inclusive political system. The Houthis, of course, they have this crazy idea that they have the godly right to rule Yemen. Now, this is not accepted by, of course, does not only come from the Shiite background, but how can you impose that on Al-Mahra or Hadramaut or Adan or Ta'iz? This is not acceptable. So this arrogance of the gun must be stopped. How does it stop? Yes, by stopping Iran from supporting such ideas or such themes or such power to be imposing such a rule on the rest of Yemen. There is a lot of nationalism, yes. There is a lot of rhetoric. The rhetoric is not good enough. The idea now is to share power and to make Yemen a more, if you call it confederacy, a federation, a union of some sort, that all people are happy with their own livelihoods in their own regions. And of course, we can agree on the common ground and the common government that will basically manage this union. How that is drawn out, there has been an attempt about 10 years ago, or 12 years ago, 13 years ago, with the national outcome of the national. But of course, later on, a constitution was drafted, and that's exactly when the Houthis came in and captured or hijacked the country. So Hadramaut now is looking forward, and we in the Hadramaut National Council, and of course with all our partners in Hadramaut, including the Tribal Alliance, including social society, civil society, and all other factions of Hadramaut, we have already a draft of what kind of Hadramaut we want and what kind of relationship we want to have with the central government or with our neighbors or even with the outside world.
Okay, we're going to leave it there because we're out of time.
Basically, we are looking for modernism and human rights and democracy. These are our main titles.
All right, we really appreciate you sharing that with us. Dr. Saad al-Din bin Taleb, former Yemeni minister and member of the Presidium of the National Council of Hadramaut. Thank you very much indeed for speaking to us today. Now, turning our attention to the Middle East, Israel has launched new strikes on the Gaza Strip, where more than 400 Palestinians have been killed since the US brokered ceasefire in October of last year. Well, more than half of Gaza is now under Israeli occupation. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia is stepping up humanitarian aid, expanding air, sea and land routes with a view to getting supplies to Palestinian civilians faster. Well, let's talk more about that now, and we can speak to Ambassador Dr. Omar Awadallah, who is the Deputy Foreign Minister of Palestine, who joins us now from Ramallah. Thank you very much indeed for taking the time to speak to us. I just want to ask you about this announcement by Saudi Arabia that it's stepping up the delivery of humanitarian assistance to Gaza. What's your overall understanding of the humanitarian situation on the ground at this present moment in Gaza?
Thank you for having me. Actually, the situation is terrible in Gaza, and we were looking forward for the ceasefire because we wanted the starvation that Israel used as a method of war to be stopped, and to have the humanitarian aid enter to Gaza at scale with the support of our brothers, including our brothers, the Saudi Arabia, including the international organizations, other donor community. Unfortunately, Israel is still using this blockade against our people, especially in Gaza, to continue its genocidal war against our people in Gaza. Unfortunately, the trucks are not entering at scale. People are dying, freezing this time. They have been killed by bombardment, by starvation, by sexual violence and rape, and now they are dying under rain and freezing. Unfortunately, Israel is not helping in a way or another to fulfill and to implement Mr. Trump's plan that came to stop the war. And the announcement about stopping the war, unfortunately, the war did not stop. Our people still under attack in Gaza Strip, whether by attacking them directly, shooting them, or by starvation and other methods of war that Israel is using against our people in Gaza. Israel broke the ceasefire so many times under the watch of the international community, unfortunately, with silence, with great silence. At the same time, there is the principled position by our brothers in Saudi Arabia that they are trying also to push for the humanitarian aid to enter into Gaza, as they did on political track, on other tracks, to support the Palestinian people.
Okay, and obviously one thing that's going to make the humanitarian situation even more critical is this announcement by Israel that 37 humanitarian organizations are going to be banned from Gaza. We're talking about really significant organizations like Médecins Sans Frontières, or Doctors Without Borders as it's known, the Norwegian Refugee Council, Oxfam. They've got to leave within 60 days apparently, and I'm just wondering what kind of an impact you think that's going to have.
You know, I think if you look at the situation from the point of view of the Palestinian people, you feel that this is a revenge, Israeli revenge against this organization, that they were working in Gaza to support the humanitarian aid in Gaza, because Israel, they really wanted the Palestinian people to starve to death in Gaza. They wanted the Palestinian people to forcibly transferred out of Gaza and go out of Gaza. But with the help of such organizations, the Palestinian people in a way or another, they survived because of the support of these principled organizations, international organizations, including the 37 organizations that Israel is trying to ban. Israel is not sovereign in Gaza. They are not sovereign in the West Bank, so they should not have the leverage to say this organization to work, that organization not to work. But we know that Israel is a rogue state. Israel is above the international law, unfortunately. I think that these countries that these organizations belong to, they should take measures against Israel and to tell Israel that there is consequences against what Israel is doing for these organizations. I think the impact will be horrible. The impact will be disastrous because these organizations, they used to support our people in Gaza on the sphere of their work. Some of them are medicine, some of them are doctors, some of them are humanitarian aid, some of them are food suppliers. So I think Israel is trying to continue its genocide by taking revenge of these organizations and from the international organizations, including the UN itself.
Right, and Dr. Awadallah, I mean, we relied on people from organizations like the Norwegian Refugee Council, like MSF, to tell us what was happening on the ground in Gaza, because, of course, journalists aren't allowed in there. And Israel has decided it's going to maintain its ban on foreign journalists operating in Gaza. Why do you think they have such a ban in place in the first place?
It's obvious that they don't want anyone to witness the crimes that they are committing in Gaza. They don't want anyone to enter to Gaza to see the terrific scene in Gaza about all this disastrous and this disaster that a man-made disaster by the Israeli occupying forces and by their officials in Tel Aviv, unfortunately. So they don't want anyone to witness, to see, and to try to help to put the right narrative about what really happened for the last 2 years, about who is the criminal and who is the genocidal aggressor against the Palestinian people, and how they viciously attacked the Palestinian people, and they were killed not only children, but also they killed journalists, they killed paramedics and doctors and all civilian objects, including attacking hospitals and schools. I think they don't want any witness to see what is really happening around.
And Dr. Awadallah, what the Israelis say is that it's actually very dangerous for journalists to go to Gaza, and that's why this ban is in place. What do you make of that?
I think the journalists themselves, they answered Israel at that juncture. They told them that we are expert and we know where to go and where not to go, and this is our work. We know how to deal with the difficult situations. But Israel, as I said, they are only seeking reasons not to give any permission to any journalist or to any humanitarian aid assistance or aid organization to enter to Gaza and to stop the starvation and to stop the genocide in Gaza. It's obvious.
Okay, Dr. Awadallah, let's talk about Gaza a bit more specifically, and then we'll turn to events in the West Bank. I mean, you've painted a bleak picture of the ceasefire. It's been reported that some 400 or so Palestinians have been killed since the ceasefire deal was struck. 3 Israeli soldiers have also been killed during that time. I know you don't speak for Hamas, but would you say that apart from the repatriation of the body of one of the hostages, would you say that Hamas had fulfilled its side of the bargain?
Actually, I'm not a spokesperson of Hamas, but I think that the issue of the bargain, it was a clear deal. It was a plan of Mr. Trump. Then it became a resolution at the Security Council. It's clear that this resolution speaks about Israeli withdrawal from Gaza, Israeli cessation of hostilities against the Palestinian people and cessation of the killing of the Palestinian people. The withdrawal from Gaza to let the aid to enter to Gaza at scale, nothing out of this happened. And I think we need to look at the picture from the other side also. What Israel is doing now, they are dividing Gaza into pockets, unfortunately. They are killing there and here and there. So I think Israel yet did not fulfill what they should to do, actually, according to this ceasefire agreement. But also to talk about Hamas and what Hamas is doing, I think with the help of the mediators and the guarantors, I think it's clear that Hamas should fulfill also its part of this agreement. And the guarantors and the mediators, they said it, that Hamas will fulfill its obligation in this equation.
Okay, and of course there's no Hamas in the West Bank, and yet between the months October 2023 and October 2025, it's understood that more than 1,000 Palestinians were killed in the West Bank. Most recently, maybe you have more accurate information than me, more recent information, but the most recent example I found is in Nablus, deadly violence there last week. How would you describe the overall situation in the West Bank right now?
I think the genocidal war that Israel started in Gaza 2 years ago is still continuing in the West Bank, but this time by annexation, by settler terrorism, by settlements, by the Israel occupying forces attacking the Palestinian people, cities and villages, closing, having more than 1,000 checkpoints and iron gates, are isolating the West Bank and the cities and the Palestinian communities from each other. The attack on all our people. So I think Israel is continuing its genocidal war, and Israel was never about peace. This is their project. Their project is to forcibly transfer the Palestinian people out of Palestine, or to be arrested arbitrarily under the Israeli detention laws, new laws. Adding to this, they are working hardly, to cut the ties of the Palestinian people with their Christian and Muslim places in Jerusalem. So the situation in West Bank is not better than in Gaza. They are trying to provocate our people to react on this aggression, because it is the best way for Israel to answer the reaction of the Palestinian people and to start, using the obvious words that they are attacking terrorism and they've been attacked, and all this propaganda that Israel is mastering actually on the international media. So the situation is more worse now, because the settlers and their violence, their terrorism has intensified actually in the latest weeks. There is a big support by the Israeli government, and especially Ben Gvir and Smotrich, supporting these settlers, weaponizing media, weaponizing, sending them weapons, weaponizing all the tools to attack the Palestinian people and to make the life more misery for the Palestinian people. This is the situation in the West Bank. It's the same in Gaza. Unfortunately, Netanyahu is still wanted as a criminal before the International Criminal Court. They tried so many times to appeal this resolution by the ICC, but they did not succeed, and the ICC is still asking for arrest warrant for Mr. Netanyahu and his ex-war minister. So the situation is still the same. Unfortunately, some countries are still dealing with Mr. Netanyahu, not as a war criminal, but they are still dealing with him and visiting him and talking to him, forgetting that they are members to the ICC. A lot of things that are happening these days in the occupied Palestinian territory, including in East Jerusalem.
And just lastly, Dr. Awadallah, I wanted to ask you about these reports of fresh tensions with Bedouin communities. And I just wondered what the latest is that you're hearing there. This isn't new, is it?
Yeah, but it's not totally new, actually. But Israel is trying to attack everywhere. They are trying to demolish houses and homes, arbitrarily arrest Palestinian people, killing, annexing settlement building, attacking on the Christian and Muslim holy places, genocide in Gaza, preventing the entry of food to Gaza. More than 10 kinds of crimes against the Palestinian people, because it will be difficult for you to say that Israel is attacking the Bedouin communities, but at the same time they are annexing in another place. In another place, the settler terrorism is attacking another village. So they are trying to put set of crimes against the Palestinian people. As you know, that the Bedouin communities or the Palestinian Bedouins in the occupied Palestinian territory, especially in the West Bank, they are guarding Jerusalem. And if they are attacking the Bedouin community in Palestine, they are continuing with their master plan of E1 settlement block that will isolate Jerusalem out of its Palestinian natural extension and the Palestinian natural neighborhood, to take it out and to divide the West Bank into two parts. So this is part of its colonial thinking, its colonial regime, its colonial project against the Palestinian people to attack the Bedouin community, who they have also roots inside Israel. In the 1948 Green Line inside Israel, there is also Bedouin communities that also under attack, unfortunately.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to speak to us. Ambassador Dr. Omar Awadallah, thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you.
Well, staying with the Middle East, Iraq's new parliament last week elected Haibat al-Halbousi as the new speaker. That is the first step since November's elections. But the new government faces a number of challenges. Well, let's get more now. We can speak to Hossein Alawi, who is the advisor to the Iraqi Prime Minister, who joins us now from Baghdad. Thank you very much indeed for joining us once again here on Al Arabiya English. The new parliament there in Iraq has had its first sitting, since elections were held about 3 months ago. And a Speaker of Parliament, Haibat al-Halbousi, has been given the role of Speaker. But quite a lot of other issues still need to be resolved. And I'm just wondering, first of all, why does it take so long to form a government there in Iraq?
Yeah, the result of the election in Iraq now, it is good sign from Iraqi Parliament after to complete the three positions for the speaker and the deputy, the first deputy and the second deputy. This sign, it is good consensus between political parties and the blocs about the government formation. But now waiting to the election for the president. The president is very important because we have 218 or 19 seats. This matter is not easy, really, because based this matter on the political consensus between the Iraqi political parties and the blocs between the coordination framework and the Sunni parties and the blocs and the Kurdish parties and the blocs. For also, we waiting about the nominated the name the Prime Minister from the coordination framework, because the dialogue is continue between the all parties and members seat in the coordination framework. And the road is not easy, face many obstacles, but the trust building, it is a growth, it is good sign now. And we waiting now, today, the close for the nominated names, opening the list for the president election. And after the choice from the Iraqi parliament, the president already the president talked with the coordination framework, because it is the biggest blocks in the political parties in the Iraqi parliament. And after that, have right to give name and the government formation.
Okay, and of course you are an advisor to Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani, and his bloc won the most seats, I believe, in the elections in November. Do you think it looks like he's going to remain Prime Minister at the conclusion of this whole process?
Yeah, Mr. Mohammed Shia al-Sudani, the lead for the blocks of building and development, and it is have seat and members in coordination framework. It is continue the dialogue with Mr. Al-Maliki, with Mr. Hakim, with Mr. Abadi, with all leadership in the coordination framework about nominated name, or to dialogue, to more dialogue, and to put it the one name to introduce for the Iraqi parliament after to deeply dialogue with the Sunni and the Kurdish about the consensus for the names, and after that, if you it's okay and the gunning the consensus, maybe to nominate it the second term. And if you face the problem, maybe to go to the national space, and the national space, it is the same process in the last election, and the fifth result election in 2021. For also now it is continue the dialogue and continue to work together, if you individual together in the coordination framework about nominated the one name. Maybe it's not easy, but it is continue the activity with Maliki as a leader for the coordination framework, and if you gunning the consensus to nominated the names for the as the prime minister for second peer time, and talking with the two blocks in the nation, Sunni and the Kurdish, if you like, and the to participate to government formation.
Okay, and of course Iraq faces this very complicated and delicate balance between US influence and Iranian influence. And of course Iraq is home to a number of pro-Iranian, anti-Western armed groups who operate in the country. Do you think Iraq has to choose? Is it Iran, is it America, or is it both?
I think that any nominated for the prime minister put it the Iraqi first, because it is obligate for the Iraqi people and to transition the voted from the election, result election, and go to the space for the national working together to implement all commitment, political commitment in the election. For also, I think maybe to influence the foreign state such as the Iran and the United States, but no influence directly. Maybe to just to talking about now. Maybe it is like or unlike the policy, the activity for action, but in the reality now it is the political equal. It is Iraqi. It is more than the foreign state to influence and effect on the prime minister names and the programs and the activity for the Iraqi government or the new Iraqi government. But now I think we're waiting about the consensus, the national consensus. It is very necessary to protect the names for to lead the prime minister position, because it is not easy now to balance between the nationality demand from the Shia community, Kurdish community, and Sunni community. In addition, I think it is continue the inspector about who's the names final to protect from the coordination framework. For also, I agree with idea about the influence for the fifth election time in the between 2005 and 2025. But now I think it is different way. The political will, it is clear. The demand for the national leader, it is good draw. But we need now, I think, from any prime minister to focus on the Iraqi affairs, because Iraqi affairs, it is priority for the Iraqi people, for the all parties don't participate in the election, especially in the Sadr movement. But also, I think it is very important to focus nationality to more than anything.
Yeah, I mean, Washington, and in particular the Trump administration, has issued several warnings to Iraq about this Iranian influence on Iraqi affairs. And I'm just wondering whether, when you look at events in Venezuela over the last 2 or 3 days, whether those warnings from the Trump administration have taken on a new level of seriousness.
Yeah, I think the Venezuela case, it is different way on Iraq. Iraq, it is friendly for the United States. It is good relationship between the Iraqi government and the United States. But I think it is some issue we need to more discussion between the Iraq and the United States, especially about disarming the armed factions. The armed factions now, the majority, it is acceptable to integration in political process, which is a good sign, really. But we need to more than to push it process from the new government, adapt the program for the government and the prime minister. Who's the name for the prime minister? It is maybe to influence in this matter. In addition, I think it is now the leadership in the United States, it is understanding the Iraqi problem about many issues to publisher from the or the issue the statement from the any officially official responsible in any touch or the official direct on the Iraqi file. For also, I think to reading many demand, many statements to issue from the special envoy, the U.S. Department, the Department of War, or any the institution from the United States. But I think now to support it, the stability. The stability is very important for the Iraqi government, Iraqi parties, the Iraqi people. In addition, the United States, we need to look at the stability. In addition, we need to seize the interference from any countries in the region, in the world, on Iraq. For also the Iraq, it is respect the relationship with the United States, respect the relationship with the sixth state in neighborhood. In addition, we work together with the United States, with Iran, with the Arab Gulf state, with the Turkey government, about the stability, about the protect the stability, about to expanding the activity in the foreign affairs, Iraqi foreign affairs, about focus the economy, the investment. For also yesterday, it is Chevron to was coming in Baghdad and was meeting with the Prime Minister and to talking about in Basra field about to more activity to Chevron company. Also, it is different way when you compare in 2005, in 2010, in 2000. After the collapse of Mosul. Now it is the stability in Iraq, it is very clear. For also it is a good sign about to gunning the companies from the United States, from the region, from the world, to coming in Iraq and to work together to development the Iraqi economy.
Okay, and just lastly, and briefly if you don't mind, you told this channel recently that Iraqi citizens have been recruited into the Russian army, about 5,000 of them so far, and they've been fighting in Ukraine. I'm wondering, how much of a concern is this to the Iraqi government?
Yeah, I don't have now to officially to number because we Iraqi government to establishment the special committee and to an inspector all names for the Iraqi citizen to participate in the Russian army and to participate in the war. But now the Iraqi government, from the Foreign Affairs Ministry, the intelligence community, to work with the Russia inside and about to exchange the information and to inspector and to put it to the new approach about to announcement to rebag in Iraq officially from the Foreign Affairs Ministry. In addition, to work with the embassy for the Iraqi embassy in the Moscow, to work with the Russian government about to getting the officially number, and after that to work together. But the Iraqi government focus in this matter يعني between 15 months to collect the information and collect the number and to oversighting the social media and to talk with the Iraqi youth to enjoy the phenomenal war between Ukraine and the Russia. And in addition, maybe to after to a new government to declare about the number for the Iraqi citizen. In addition, we work together with Russia, with the international community, with international organizing to put it the number officially and put it the new policy and the approach to rebag in Iraq.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed for your time. Hossein Alawi, advisor to the Iraqi Prime Minister. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. You are welcome.
Well, that is all we have time for on Global News today. Thank you very much indeed for watching. Be sure to join us again tomorrow for more exclusive interviews. Until then, goodbye.